Just to sort of segue into the panel, welcome. There's plenty of seats on the left-hand side if you want, or not. So I was thinking about how to do this because, come on now, go on. Yeah, I will introduce these wonderful panelists in a second. But I was thinking about how to do this because I've never chaired a panel before, and I was thinking, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to channel my kind of inner Paxman and be really aggressive? And then I hit on it. I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and be like a pound shop Melvin Bragg. So those of you who've listened to In Our Time, you'll know he starts with a couple of minutes where he sort of introduces the topic, whether it's, the Antikythera mechanism and what it can teach us about the Druids or anything like that. So I'm going to do that for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to introduce the illustrious panel that we have. So, as we've been talking about, 20 years ago, small businesses struggled to run mass reach ads, but big firms had it sorted. And there was kind of a clear division of labour. So the sellers mostly were paying for the reach measurement, the eyeball measurement. Buyers and sellers transacted on that reach, and then the buyers did the work of measuring the impact of that exposure on the things that they actually care about, which is their business and making some money, because that kind of matters, right? And they mostly kept that to themselves. Apart from the odd, both the learning and the money, to be honest, but particularly the learning. So apart from the occasional IPA paper, which we'll hear more about in a second, it was very much themselves. And we used to talk about information asymmetry in media trading, and the people selling the media didn't know the value that was really being generated because that information all sat with the buyers. And then along came Google and Meta, and it kind of changed everything. Because instead of selling space, they were selling time. Their ad units were not pixels, they were predictions of business impact, of clicks, of visits, of purchases. And so they relieved the advertisers of that work of targeting ads and measuring their impact, particularly for online outcomes. And as we've seen over the past 20 years, advertisers have loved it. Most media money in mature markets is now spent buying outcome-denominated ad products. And therefore, any firm that wants to can advertise at scale. But there was a catch. And it's not the catch I was talking about earlier in terms of incrementality. I mean, that's kid stuff. The catch was we swung from a world where advertisers kept the effectiveness learning private as a source of competitive advantage to one where the effectiveness learning was effectively shared and ultimately pooled. So if all competing car dealerships, I don't know why car dealerships, that's a particularly sort of potent one for this stuff, have their configurator interactions piped into Meta through the, whatever, Conversions API or something. The giant machine learning model in the cloud that they look after learns from all of them. And the crushingly awful thing about machine learning, for those of you who've worked with it at all, is that your own data is worth fuck all. So even if you take your data out, it doesn't matter. The only person that loses, if you withdraw your data from Meta or Google, is you. Because the model's still trained. So the platforms today have really rich data not only on consumers, but also from advertisers. And so they're building models to show ads to people who wouldn't otherwise buy or visit. So in terms of my earlier kind of analogy, it's almost as if you can say to Google, right, just water the dry bits of earth under each leaf. All right, I'm going to stick with this water thing if it kills me, right? So that's what you can now do. So when you then come to thinking about the media ecosystem, and I'm not going to make any political points, don't worry, but over half the media money is going to the platforms, probably for video ads as well, we reckon. Do we think, as an industry, regardless of allegiance and where we sit, do we think that over half the value of advertising for advertisers sits with those ad products? Or are other channels like, linear telly? Undervalued, maybe? And then what does that mean for performance telly? Because as we've seen in all these sessions, there's TV starting to get some kind of digital grip on its own exposure data, but then what is it going to link to? What is the future going to hold? Is it going to be like, digital advertising was 20 years ago, where there's loads of stuff happening on your screen until it got sorted out? Including L-shaped ad formats, might I say, Moritz? Or is it going to be something else? Are we going to leapfrog and get to a sort of incrementality moment for TV? So with me to discuss performance TV today are Lesley Myers-Lamptey, who is leading the charge on retail media as head of commerce strategy at TP&M. And TP&M, I must admit, I have a real soft spot for because I started life in a full service agency, and they're the sort of closest to modern equivalent of that I can think of. Sam Taylor, who really needs no introduction, but has been kind of instrumental from a client point of view in championing effectiveness measurement approaches, both in his role at Direct Line Group, but also as a kind of ISBA stalwart, has won IPA effectiveness awards for that, and I think deserves a lot of credit for his intellectual generosity. You know, he's not been like Gollum, hoarding all of the information to himself. He's actually shared it very widely with the industry. And then Tristram MacDonald from Jellyfish, who has risen from, I don't know what they call baby jellyfish, jelly babies? I don't know.
I mean, I look like a
jelly
baby.
There we go. Right.
Doesn't it?
To senior programmatic director there, and who also, in his spare time, if you look on his Instagram, paints the most beautiful Warhammer miniatures.
It does kind of make it sound like you've just found me off the side of the street.
But yeah, sorry, total side note, but I you know, it's all about bringing your whole self to work. Right, ladies and gentlemen, our panel. So, Lesley, if I could start with you, please. You know, can you talk about what you're seeing in retail media as it kind of relates to this sort of new TV targeting? You know, what signals are coming to market? What inventory can you activate on? How is all that playing out?
Yeah, well, I think it's a really exciting time. Obviously, it's quite a buzzword at the moment, retail media, and how it's starting to come more upper funnel and around more about brand advertising. So definitely a lot of interest and a lot of questions that have been coming up. From us and our clients, the ones who are most interested are more like CPG clients, because before, you know, as they haven't really got much insight in terms of how people are seeing an ad and then going to purchase, especially as a lot of purchases still happen in store. For a lot of our clients who are CPGs, over 80% would happen in store. So there's been more appetite to take advantage of some of those opportunities with some of the retailers who are working with platforms to integrate their data and to find those new buyers, new to brand buyers, those category shoppers who they're not already reaching. But it's definitely not like a silver bullet. You know, it's not like the only thing to do. It definitely forms as part of our plan and not as the only thing that we're doing, because with connected TV and with all sort of like TV advertising, it is all about that blend of brand and performance. You know, you have to think of it full funnel and not just one thing that it's there to do. So a lot more looking at how do we find those incremental audiences, and that's where it's really exciting. But we have seen overall with other clients as well that there are other signals that you can use in connected TV, which we've been testing as well. So with another client of ours, a multi-market client such as Whirlpool, we're using sort of like Captify's search behaviour data to really identify people who might be category shoppers, and then also looking at what some of those search uplifts are across multiple markets. So again, there's really useful data and insights which through connected TV that we can be using to understand outcomes, which might not lead to an exact purchase straight away, especially if it's something that takes a longer consideration, but can at least give us an idea of intent of someone and whether or not there's been a reason why someone might want to go and purchase.
Brilliant, thank you. And Tristram, so the money's in your hand, you've got to spend it, you've got an array of browser tabs open in front of you, and you've got half an eye to the measurement that you're going to have to present back to the client afterwards.
You've got a camera in my office. This is how I work.
So, where is the login for that? I knew I had a password for DV360. Yeah. So how do you approach that? I mean, that's a daunting responsibility.
Yeah, I think as a programmatic practitioner, obviously, I think some of you might view me quite aggressively as to going after your budgets, but I think there is a lot of problems that CTV have, which have been in the programmatic space for ages. So there's actually a well-built solution as to how we approach that. And it's not going down like, oh, let's put QR codes on everything, let's put coupon codes, let's try and get people to interact with the ads while they're on TV. Because they're trying to watch something. So they're not going to pause it. No matter how good your ad is, they're not going to stop and look at that there. There are some interesting indicative metrics you can get from there that can give you some steers. So there will be some people that interact, but what you really want to look at is that post-view measurement. And that is, either through look at kind of pixeling or linking up user IDs or some form there, but you want to see how, after someone has seen that ad, what are they doing and what those households are doing. And this is where things like search lift comes up, looking at like MMMs, geolifts, all of that to give you a state. But TV is a great place to be. And what it comes down to is, from my point of view, who is going to, and this is very digital native on this, who is going to give me the agility to not only get those insights, but then act on them really, really quickly. That's what I'm really looking for is, hey, if I see a search is really, really good against a certain age demographic, and I haven't put a huge amount of money against that, do I want to go through and invest that, and how quickly can I action that? Or if a certain type of ad is performing really well, resonating really well, how can I quickly get that into all of my devices? So I see performance TV more about agility and the ability to do cool things and react in market, rather than this is going to generate me a ton of sales straight away.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, so Sun, you've got your planning done, you've got the sort of jet fighter pilots who are in the sort of, with the control systems in front of them, and you're directing all of this as the CMO, and you've got to make it all work together, and you've got different voices in your ear talking about performance measurement and other metrics, and you've got your CFO to talk to. How do you do all of that?
So I would say that this is really interesting when you come to these sorts of things and talk to these have panels, brilliant panels like this, because we focus in so much around CTV and programmatic and retail media now. Whereas as a marketer, we're in the business of doing one thing, and that's targeting audiences. And so and I am a traditional, been around in the market a long time, not as long as Jeff, but been around a few years. And so we're in our business, we're adopting new ways to target audiences, and we know that TV as a marketplace has been brilliant for us. We know for all advertisers, we've got evidence as long as we've got so much evidence to show that. Now we've got what Tess Outs would say is TV's had babies. We can do more shit. And we can do it really well, and we can do it more effectively. So what I try and do with my team is stand back from because programmatic's just a methodology to access an audience. And I stand back from that and go, actually, we have so many opportunities now to drive success by targeting audiences, whether it be top of funnel, which we call prime, not brand, because brand sounds like it isn't performance, but it is. It's about driving demand for tomorrow's sale, whether it's performance, and now for us it's CRM. So we are spending money on telly to drive engagement amongst existing customers in a way that we could never have done before. What we try and do now is stand back from this world and go, actually, is it about CTV, or is it about linear, or is it BVOD or SVOD or AVOD? Who cares? It's about audiences. What comes with that is a challenge around measurement, but it's all about audiences. And then let the brilliant people that do the planning get access to those audiences in the most effective way.
Yeah. And it's about the creative as well. So I think to that point, you have to have that brand thread throughout there. You have to know what the brand idea is, even if it's from a performance ad. And that's what a lot of the recent studies on the multiplier effect and things like that have proven, that you can't have brand disconnected from performance, or performance only focused on an outcome and not connected to what the brand is.
And I think that's where the data thing comes in, because if you think about brand, performance, CRM as a Venn diagram, customer is right in the middle.
Yeah.
The audience is right in the middle. So now the ability to go, well, what is my plan to attract, get to know, have a first date with, get to know better, sell more products to, get them to stay longer. It's all about the audience. And now we have the ability to use great new platforms and CTV as an example of that to have a relationship right the way through the funnel and be able to potentially measure that relationship.
Okay, that's interesting. So I'm going to push you on this a little bit, because we talk a lot. We talk a lot about audiences. What is an audience? An audience, in the sense, is a hypothesis of who it is going to be effective to engage. But there is an alternate view, and let me try and articulate that alternate view, which is, and I did hear this actually when I was at Google. I heard there was someone who was in the US and was very deep in the sort of product world, and I was sort of kind of bright-eyed and going, yeah, so I'm really interested in, my background is planning and strategy, I'm really interested in sort of reversing out of the machine learning models to get to the sort of human behavior about this and understanding audience. And he went, laughed at me. Said, don't be stupid. In a T-ROAS world, nobody gives a shit about audience. And it brought me up short, because it's a very clear point of view, which essentially says, and particularly with these sort of incrementality products, advertisers, all you have to do, put your money in one slot, put your assets in another slot, and don't worry if you can't make video, we'll just make it move for you. And then put your outcome data in a third slot, press go. You don't need these people, you don't need the agencies. Just trust us and we'll sort it out. We'll give you the outcomes that you want. How do you resist the siren call of such a creature?
But you can't when you know, the art of planning will always be the art of planning, and it doesn't matter, you know, how many great technologies there are to deliver that. You need a holistic plan. So we know as an organisation, we know, and having 3 big brands in the insurance space, we know the power of the value that linear gives us. We know the value of what it might what targeting customers on the basket abandonment journey might give us through TV. We know what it might drive in terms of engagement or cross-sell or upsell. We know all those things. And if we're looking at a customer-centric plan, we have to have good old-fashioned media planning in a holistic sense. So that each of the different types of activities, whether it be programmatic, excel at the thing they're good at, but they have to be delivered in a holistic plan. Otherwise, you're just looking at one specific.
Tristram, are you sure? Is your mortgage in jeopardy?
So, as the digital guy, you might think I would go, hey, the algorithms are great and we should be doing a lot of that. I don't agree with that philosophy at all. Like, all the Metas, the Googles, they want to make these big black boxes where you don't have to think and you just trust them. But if you go down that, everyone's media ends up being the same, you're investing in the same things, and your creative all ends up the same. And ultimately, these algorithms don't know your customers, like, at all. They know some signals about your customers, but they don't understand them, and they don't understand your business. So what you need to do is kind of break up those black boxes, and I use the analogy of like little black cubes that are very focused on certain tasks. So you might have an algorithm that is working against your younger customers. You might have an algorithm that's working against your first-party data, but they are very distinctly broken out. And then you can start to get insights back on, okay, this is working really well on these young customers. This isn't. I can go and give that to the creative agency who can give me something a little bit better, or actually, the Meta algorithm isn't working really well against these younger customers, but the Google algorithm is working fantastic on that. So
okay,
it is learning to shepherd those algorithms and not just trusting them like just a sheepdog to go round up all the sheep for you. You need to tell them where you want the sheep to go.
You've just given him another analogy.
We are going to be terrible for each other on analogies.
Absolutely. So you're breaking up the models, and you've got this sort of custom algorithms that you're training and setting off to do different jobs. I promise I won't say the A word. You will know what that is. And agent, sorry. That's really interesting. But then how does that interfere? I mean, I years ago, I tried to do this at Mindshare and tried to get the sort of the programmatic people to talk to the planning people. I totally failed at it.
Yeah.
It was impossible. But how do you have a more fruitful conversation there?
Yeah, it's challenging. And as you said, like, even when we're talking about connected TV and all the signals and the data that's available, that is a real challenge because, you know, traditional sort of like reservation buyers or like, you know, TV buyers and moving into this connected TV world, it's a slightly different language. You're moving away from, you know, the 1+ reach model to talking about these cohorts of audiences that you can tailor different content to. But I think that there is a bit of a balance of both, and there's a lot of experimentation that we're doing as well to understand where do we see the value in overlaying data and, you know, having these different cohorts. And when there's a time of actually, sometimes it's not that objective of the campaign, and it all has to go back into what is the business objective that you're trying to achieve, and then what is the right sort of strategy for that. Because the reality is that when we keep on overlaying all this data as well, there is a price premium to that as well. It is expensive when you start to use retail media data in a connected TV environment. It suddenly inflates it, and you have to prove to our clients that that is worth it, and it's going to drive that ROI for their business. And so there is a bit of a balancing act about knowing when to use the data, when to be more targeted, when to customize creative and content, and when actually you're doing a bit more of a brand job and it might be about reaching more people in a more cost-efficient way, but balancing it with some of that more sort of like tailored content that you can deliver.
That's really interesting. So Sam, then, if you're on the receiving end of, I don't know, modelled conversions from Meta, and there's this thing that's spitting out some numbers saying, you know, this is the impact that we delivered for you. How do you engage with that?
So those conversions, we would call that insight, and we'd only call it insight because it's just a useful piece of information for us to understand whether that activity is working or not. It's linear, mostly, so you can't really understand what's the combined impact of all the media that you're running, but we do use it for insight. I guess the challenge you've got as well is with those platforms is that you've got individual bits of insight and you can't look at the overarching piece. So within those walled gardens, you know, if Google says that the ads that we deliver through them deliver X, Y, Z, I go, well, I run the same audience on Meta, I run the same audience on you know, some campaigns like over the last quarter, we ran video campaigns on Meta, YouTube, or Meta TV360, Amazon DSP, Sky, AdSmart, and on Netflix. And we're running all of that. So that information is useful. But I've then, to my team and the agency have to then look at that and go, well, what did we learn? Until we have a holistic view of everything, it's really hard. So it's useful, but it is insight, and that's all it is.
God, you're really committed to having humans in the loop, aren't you? This is,
You should only use like platform conversions for that platform. If you start comparing, because all of them are modeling and they all have their own biases. It's very good at understanding what is the best way to optimize within that platform. But realistically, you need some form of MMM, GeoLift, or something that is completely neutral to actually get how you would then adjust those conversions or weighting that you would put on for the incrementality.
We've been doing that for years, right? So in our PPC spend, we have the linear track PPC. That what we understand is good or bad on linear is based on what the MMM model told us. So we create a new level, we translate that into a linear, and then we go, right, for this to work on a certain ROI, you have to deliver this number of clicks, this amount of quotes and sales. And then every 6 months we reset it, and then we measure the linear. And now you can do that by platform based on what you believe the linear journey for that platform looks like, but it is only instant.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And a lot of the time, there's a lot of questions around platforms marking their own homework as well, you know, and some of the, you know, the biases in the data. So you do need to have that third party. But I think some of the challenges is that some smaller brands, they might not have the budget to have MMM studies that you probably have and do it at that level. So there is a bit of balance about how do we get that robustness of understanding the performance of your advertising, even when you don't have MMM fully in study. And that's where those kind of geo lifts, those kind of, you know, smaller experiments and tests that you're doing can really give some of those.
Yeah, and I think for me, this is where we've now invested in creating a data clean room, because we could take our CDP, which we've got TV as a CDP, we can all our shopper data, we can then push that through to Google using the Google Aid conversion. Is it? We can then, is that better? We can then push it, that's fine. No? Have I got to hold this? Oh, yeah. So we can push that data through to Google Aid Conversion API, and we can look at that via that platform. But if we were to push that data from the CDP through to a clean room and then do closed loop measurement using Google, then you get a very different outcome, because it's our data, it's measuring against our sales, using and so you use that on a good old-fashioned below-the-line test and control, and understand whether those exposed behave differently to those that weren't. So that's just a different way of measuring. Now, I think the challenge we have today is, which we now is troubling us, is the MMM. When you're doing very, very small first or second party data audiences, you will never see that in an MMM model. So I think for me, the test and control is, and going back to the old days in DM and below line, where that is the only way really to then use MMM more of your external factors, and then use the closed loop measurement for your targeted based actions.
Direct marketing, for those of you under a certain age, is where you folded up the ad and put it in an envelope.
That's right.
So one quick question then for the agency folk, and then I'll open it up to the floor, because then that way you're keeping yourselves from lunch. So what do you, obviously here you've got, so here you've got a kind of large, well-organized advertiser that understands these things, a really sophisticated understanding, but you will also have clients who are at the other end of, my table earlier, who maybe only have about 250 employees. And I had an example of this recently where a really, really lovely advertiser came to talk to us as a team and said, look, we totally get that this is a bit complicated and measuring telly isn't straightforward and so on. And I then said, oh, yeah, but you do realise you've actually got a bunch of kit already set up and turned on. And so I sent them to look at those bits of kit. And then they came back, and the next minute, it's like a sort of Chicken Little moment. It's, the sky's falling down. We have to stop the spend immediately because the cost per something has gone to this level, and that's way below the amount that I'm paying. And I had to do a whole thing to kind of reassure them. I go, no, that conversation we had earlier about why actually it's a bit more complicated and you shouldn't necessarily believe the numbers that you see on the dashboard. How should I have handled that better?
That's a really tricky, and it comes up a lot. So as an agency, what we want to do is understand where our clients' maturity is with measurement. What do they understand and what don't they understand? Because I don't want to recommend something that requires a little bit more complex measurement, like CTV, if the client isn't comfortable with that, because that's just going to be a failure, or that's going to cause me the problem you have there, which is the headache of the sky's falling down, let's turn off all the spend. So you need to, and a lot of the smaller businesses are going to come at it from a performance perspective. So they're going to come out at lower funnel first, and you've got to slowly build them up. And that means you have to earn the right to talk about CTV and that branding media before you go and present it in there. So you might, and I'm sure you all hate me for saying this, you might want to go for something a little bit less risky, like YouTube, which has something that's very easily trackable and sits
You
within...
hear that intake of breath from...
Sits within that search landscape to get them comfortable with video advertising. Once they feel comfortable with video advertising, you will then see them go, oh, actually, why can't we do Sky? Why can't we do ITV? Why shouldn't we be on Netflix? But you have to build them up to that. You can't just assume because you know it's right that they are at that place at all.
I actually sometimes recommend YouTube because it's a great test bed to make sure they've got decent creative before it then goes anywhere else. But Lesley, how would you have handled?
Yeah, exactly. It's there's sometimes going to be some knee-jerk reactions, and I think that's the thing. It's just fallen into a trap as all digital advertising, where it's all about last click and all very short-termism, and it's one of those things as the agency partner to kind of show what the role is and what the objective of different activity, and make sure we're really clear on the KPIs for it and how it's being measured. I think with all these new additions of more performance in connected TV, as you also might mention, the pause ads, the QR codes you put on there, all these ways to interact, which suddenly is giving a bit more performance, we have to always remember back to the customer and the audience, how are they, consuming that content? What are they there to do? They're not there to shop straight away. There's some interesting new additions, but you shouldn't expect an immediate reaction. So it's one of those things where us being really clear about what the objective and what the other signals we can be looking at to see if that TV ad, or CTV ad has had an impact, and to make sure that we're sort of educating and looking at those as well.
Brilliant. Okay, so folks, you heard it here first. Agencies have a role to help advertisers with planning and buying. Shock news from the conference. Questions, anyone? Anybody got any burning issues that they want to tackle? All right. Oh.
Congratulations, really exciting to listen to you guys. Why do you say you should start and educate an advertiser putting money on YouTube?
Why? One, it sits in the Google ecosystem, and a lot of smaller advertisers will start with Google Ads, and they will start with search, and there will be a portion of that activity already, if they're using PMax or demand gen, that is already appearing on YouTube. So they can understand that it becomes a very easy space, and Google is very good in this regard of showing how YouTube is affecting search, because it's well within their interest to show that. So that is a very good place to start, because then you can go, okay, you can see it is impacting search, you can see there's a time delay, you get a little bit more comfortable with the incrementality of that and reaching new users, and you can very quickly prove, oh, actually, by doing this, my brand CPCs have gone down by 10%. That's really good. That's an effect I didn't expect to see. And the level of investment you need to use is significantly less than you would go for CTV. You could do a 2-week test for 10K, and that becomes a lot easier for people to swallow than going, I need, sorry, ITV and Sky, 150 to 200K to do that. That's a huge leap of faith to take straight away.
Actually, sorry, let's go.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I think that it depends on also the advertiser and the brand, and I think that with other platforms moving into this space, such as like Amazon and Amazon Prime Video, and you can see the effect on sales, it's another interesting place for brands to start to experiment as well and see that impact.
Quick show of hands, who has ever gone on to ads.google.com or business.facebook.com or whatever it is now, and at least looked or tried to run an ad on one of the platforms? Show of hands. Go on, don't be shy. Okay, that should really be everybody, I would say. I mean, obviously there are experts who can do it
Sorry, I
brilliantly.
should have raised my hand. Yes,
I was going to say yes.
I would just say, actually, just on the point, actually, when you work for a big corporate like we are, I would also say that the same principles apply, because now I've got a really good performance team, and I would say that performance team is 95% PPC. I'm trying to get them to explore new platforms to drive performance, and doing that, they are now working with the agency and buying TV, right? So I've had to take exactly the same approach. You do it in PPC, do some YouTube, test it, build out, and then suddenly you've got a performance team that are using even linear TV, and so it doesn't matter whether it's a first to TV or whether it's a small business. Actually, I've got a whole team of natively digital people, and therefore you need to also educate them the same way.
Brilliant.
But to also educate them on what they should be measuring, though, and how that changes. I think that's, as you said, with the sort of like ROAS point or something like that, you know, you don't want them to be measuring to the wrong metrics.
Yeah, I mean, I might do that. If no, has anyone else got a...
Anyone else?
Got a question. Go on.
So, great discussion, but are you saying, therefore, that I think you're saying that the right direction of travel for all countries is to go towards single currency, so that somehow we bring at least the TV data together to start off with, and then possibly go on further if we can? Is that what the aspiration is, that we do generally all collaborate, we start measuring things the same way, we start having a single output?
Yes.
Is that what the nirvana is to start off with?
From a media planning and buying perspective, absolutely. There's so much fragmentation, abundance of different media and metrics that it's really hard to get a clear idea of what's working and what isn't. Even in MMM studies, the way video is tracked, it's not broken out in the way that it should be. So there's a lot that needs to be done, and the great work you're doing with Lantern is really exciting for us, because having that kind of consolidated view will really help us show the value of the TV advertising.
I would agree with that. I think something from my perspective is often we're working with global brands and they're comparing themselves to the US market, and that's where all the budgets are decided, and they do not understand that Europe is so fragmented with so many different ways of measuring stuff, and it makes my life hell trying to translate all of that. So having a unified way to access all of Europe is really fundamental, especially when you're looking at these global brands where a lot of their media budgets are decided out of the US.
Wow, we've done US-EU relations.
You've just jumped from the UK. I was, for the moment, talking about each country, but it would be useful if each country had similar measurement techniques.
Yeah, I mean, in the digital landscape, that's where it is. Like Google message search the same way across all countries. That is, Amazon does the same thing. Netflix does the same thing. All these big platforms, their strength is you can access them across all countries, and it's measured in the same way, and it's easy for you to scale.
That's only half the journey, though, because once you get a unified measurement or the same currency, you then need advertisers to be responsible enough to know how to use it and make the right decisions and set the right briefs, set the right objectives, and measure them the right way, because otherwise you can fall to the lowest common denominator or go for the race to the bottom and end up buying shit. So it doesn't work, and I think that's really important too.
Any more for any more? Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry, there's two. Well, I mean, do you mind if we just do Owen, because he's... sorry, Owen from Measure Protocol, ladies and gentlemen. Because he, you heard them mentioned earlier, they're the panel partner for Lantern.
So, I don't know if it's on or not, but hi. I guess my question is for Sam to start with, but actually then collectively. Is the nirvana here actually just not to have each one of those things but to collectively put all of those things together? So when I'm talking about outcomes, you know, as Samir and Jeff mentioned, we're helping with Project Lantern. But my nirvana is that you plug Google and Meta and Project Lantern and X and Y and Y, and you give that to a brand. Is that the nirvana here? So that you don't have to worry about who's marking anyone's homework.
One way of doing it. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, cause there's so much investment now on measurement, and whether, you know, on linear TV, whether it be C-Flight, whether it be obviously Lantern, whether there's the obviously Origin in the UK as well, working alongside, but very slow. All this stuff's happening, and it's going to get more and more complicated. So I guess my niggle with that is that we are investing a shed load of money in a shed load of stuff. And I don't want all the broadcasters to spend all their money on it, because I want to spend it on content. But you know, we are, and I think we are, and I think you know, but we all need to collaborate as we're already doing, and to move this thing faster.
I can promise you that the money that we're spending would not buy a very good program. But anyway,
you bought some good ones, did you?
Oh God! Right, I need one of my
running
sales
5
colleagues to
minutes
tag in.
over.
Yeah.
Are we happy for one more?
Well, yeah.
Can I get an energetic
Tell you what, look,
yes?
if anybody's desperate for lunch, you're excused, and anybody else who wants to stay, and because I think they're a brilliant panel. So yeah.
So just a quick one. So when you're spending, when you're planning your spend, do you take into consideration like ad verification tools, which is very, very common in the US? Mm-hmm. So is it the same here? That's first. And the second auxiliary to that is, do you use ad verification tools when you're spending on Google? Those are 2 questions.
I guess that one's kind of directed at me. Third-party ad verification is a must. I recommend it for all of our clients. Either we will offer it to them at cost, and we will be 100% transparent, they can have access to it, or they can use whichever provider they want. YouTube has been in the news enough about ads for me to know we need to have third-party protection to verify what we're going to. I suspect that actually that's going to become even more of a bigger deal, especially with AI content coming into play, that there is going to be significantly more fraud that comes into place, and you just need specialist tech to be able to protect yourself from that.
Yeah.
Right, before we lose anyone else, you should take your round of applause. I think because you've been fantastic. Thank you.